or appeals or go to juvenile and prosecute juvie jail. So I knew I couldn't blow this thing. So I didn't have enough money for Brooks Brothers, so I went to Joseph Banks. And I got a navy blue suit, and I got the blouse that comes up to here. And of course we wouldn't wear a tie, because that would be wrong. So we had a fake rosette right there. There I was, my little fake rosette, those horrible white hose we used to wear that make your legs really look like tree trunks. And okay, so my hair then was about down to here, so I had it up, okay? And that day the air conditioner went out in the Fulton County Courthouse. And we were on the 5th floor, and they had the window open. By the time that case was over, I had taken off my jacket, my shirt was hanging out, all the like TV makeup that I don't have on right now, thank you, Lord. All the black mascara is all down here, you know. I'm like, listen, people. The grand jury was wrong, which if you ask me if I said that, I will deny that the grand jury was ever wrong. Unless they do what I don't want them to do, then they're wrong. I said, this is not a shoplifting. This is clearly an attempted shoplifting. Because do you cut things off the display when you go shopping? Of course he was going to steal it. And I remember somehow talking about murder and mayhem, and I don't know what happened, but the judge was going, I got the first conviction on attempted shoplifting. And I was on a roll. Okay, I made it out of the courthouse, my first victory. Okay, then I prosecuted a VW nut who was stealing nothing but VWs. That's when I first learned the phrase similar transaction. Does anybody know that? When the person does the same thing over and over and over. Finally, we got him lowering himself with a rope into a VW dealership. Okay, then I got him on like 28 VW thefts. Then I was so happy when I got a bank robbery, because usually that's for the feds, you know, FDIC. Why didn't I'm still so stupid? I didn't get. There must be something very wrong with this case if they don't want it, because I got it at the state prosecutor. Well, it's because nobody could identify him. That's why. And there were even pictures. But he had on a fake mustache, a fake beard, a wig, aviator sunglasses, a hat, and I'm like, Lord help me, I can't even identify him. So what this guy did, he goes in and he gives the bank teller a note. It said, don't touch the Alram. This is a Roby. He was dyslexic and he had heard a punctuation. He was like, don't, comma, touch, apostrophe, the, comma. I mean, they were all peppered in there generously. Apostrophes and commas. I'm like, that is when I became an expert in handwriting analysis on that case. So anyway, long story short, what he did was he went in the bank with this suit on. He goes in. Once she deciphered what he was saying, she gave him the money. He leaves. Then they hit the alarm. He acted like he had a gun. I never knew if he did or not. And he goes in the alley and breaks the suit off. It was basted up the back. Takes all that off and pedals away in a pair of athletic socks and shorts with the money stuffed down, I don't know where. And as all the sirens pull up. That was before DNA. I don't want to date myself, but all we had was one hair in the hat. That was it. Nothing. Until, where do you go when you can't find a witness? The jail. Because somebody wants to get out and they will tell you what they know, okay? So I said, I had an idea of who it could be. Okay, so I said, do you know this guy? He was my roommate. I said, when did you last see him? The last time I saw him, he owed me some money and he was sewing a suit one night. I'm like, well, needless to say, between the handwriting sample, the suit, and he was slew-footed, that's the only thing that the bank pictures helped me with. He walked like a duck. And don't you know, that when he was called to the stand, every juror did this over the jury rail to see him walk. And sure enough, he walked like that. Game over, conviction. He did it. Okay. So after that, my cases took a darker turn, and I was soon named one of the first female special prosecutors in inner city Atlanta, which was then the murder capital of the United States, because of the drug traffic coming from Miami straight up the interstate to your fair city. The first pit stop, Atlanta, Georgia. Turf wars like you would not believe. The crime, the murder, every night on the 11 o'clock news. It was awful. My first murder victim was named Mary. And all of you will know how difficult it is to prosecute a case when you don't know who the person is or who their family is. I remember I went to the medical examiner's office with the Polaroid of her autopsy photo. I went, "What is this on her face?" Mary had been sexually assaulted. She had been beaten and ultimately asphyxiated with a clear plastic bag, and she had tried so hard to breathe, it had gone. She had inhaled the bag, and I could see pieces of it on her face. And when he told me what that was, I said, by God, I'm going to get who did this. And the first step was finding her family. Couldn't find her family. I got a tip that her family lived in a house in a housing project. I said, well, that's impossible, because there's not a house in a housing project, they're apartments. But I went anyway. Pulled up in our county-issued Crown Vic. Got out, and lo and behold, at the edge of McDaniel Glen Housing Project sat a house. And I got out. I remember my heels dug down in the dirt. I was carrying all these files, sweating already, 10 o'clock in the morning. And I saw a silhouette behind the screen door. And then the door opened, and this huge lady, as in tall, she had her hair back really tight in a bun, and she had on an apron like you would see in a hotel of the ladies that clean. And she came right toward me, and I was standing there. And I remember she put her arms around me, and when she hugged me, it lifted me up off the ground. And she said, "I'm Mary's mother, and I knew you would come." And she took me in like I was a China doll. Do you remember the Frasier show? And the father had that horrible, ugly chair with tape on. They had one chair in the house. And she went, sat me in the chair, and I remember there was no air conditioning, ceiling fans going, and it was dark in there, and all of a sudden it seemed like 10, 15 people just showed up. And they gave me iced tea in a mason jar. They had nothing to give me. And they gave me the tea, and then they stood back and looked at me like somehow I was gonna fix everything for them. And I remember that moment. And I learned that Mary's mother had given birth to her when she was just 13, and she could never have children again. And Mary had the mind of a 5-year-old child. But I remember looking on the autopsy report, in her pocketbook was something like candy and like a baby doll brush, that comes with the doll, and like a wrench, like things that you wouldn't put in your pocketbook. It was like a little child knew she was supposed to have a pocketbook, but she didn't know what you put in there. And I remember the day that I finally got the conviction. turned around and looked in the courtroom, and nobody was there. Her mother could not even afford to take one day off of work to come and be there. And I remember walking out of the courthouse, and everybody was saying, "Oh, good job, you first murder." I was like, but inside, it wasn't happy. It wasn't jubilant. Everybody left with a broken heart. And how your staff keeps going day after day after night, and you keep doing it. I get it. I know. It brings to mind a friend of mine in New York. She was about, 29 at the time, and she got breast cancer. And we were shocked. And she went through the mastectomy, the chemo, the radiation. She lost her hair, the hair came back. She got better. 2 years later, breast cancer. Again. Had a mastectomy, went through chemo, went through radiation, got the wig. As part of her getting well, she took up jogging. And she got to a point where she was actually going to run in a race. And she went to Central Park, and she got there an hour and a half early. And all of a sudden, she looked around, everybody was stretching. So she started stretching. She did not know what she was doing. And then all of a sudden, the gun went off. She went, "Dear Lord in heaven." I started running. She was there for the 5K, which is a 3-mile race. All right. So she had been running over an hour, and she's like, and she said she passed the 5-mile mark. And she was like, "This is not the race I signed up for." She got there so early, she went with the longer race, the early. I am happy to report she ran across the 10-mile mark, running, not walking, her hands up in victory. It was not the race she was in, but by God, she ran. Later on, just before I left the DA's office, I remember I had a very, very violent drug lord. And I was practicing in court. I didn't want a demonstration snafu, like, "It doesn't fit." No. N-O. So I had to bring on a dog the next day, because the whole case hinged on the dog. The dog came along, the dog hit on drugs. There's a huge hidden cache of drugs in this location. And there was an issue as to whether or not that would be admissible. And if that wasn't admissible, the whole case fell. The guns, the ammo, the machine guns, the money, the everything would be gone. There would be no case. So I was practicing with that dog. Okay. So I was sitting there with some crack cocaine, waiting for the dog. What we would do, we would hide the coke in the courtroom. And then the dog would run around and find it. He would get used to the courtroom, or she would get used to the courtroom and not jump up on one of the jurors, okay? So I was waiting. I looked at the clock. It was about 9 o'clock. And I thought, why am I here at 9 o'clock at night waiting on a dog? I'm supposed to be married. I'm supposed to have 3 children. We were going to move to Colorado and start a whole new life. Why am I here? This is not what I signed up for. Well, I guess the Lord heard me that night. because I kept going.